Fair Game actually came together when my producer Janet Zucker met Valerie Plame in Washington, D.C., and I believe it was 2004. It was either 2004 or 2005. And, you think, what is this Hollywood producer and this spy for the CIA, what could they possibly have in common? And what they bonded over was that they were both working women with high-powered jobs who were also both wives and mothers and had to balance, even though they were working women, they still were also responsible for the family, responsible for the kids, that they got to school and that they were fed, and the carpool was arranged, and the dinner was on the table for the husband. And they spent one night, all night, talking. And by the end of the night, they really had found common ground. And Valerie ultimately trusted Janet Zucker and her husband, Jerry Zucker, to tell her life story.
The thing that's also struck me about this was that there's a lot of politics and policy and a lot of information, a lot of exposition that this movie, and they're very serious. I met the Zuckers, and they're very serious about the politics of this, very earnest and sincere about how strongly they feel about it. This movie could have been deadly. It could have been boring. It could have been really
there could be some really boring versions of. So there have been some very boring films recently about
with
politics.
You because they had this belief that you could keep it, up.
I'm actually shocked that Joe Wilson and Valerie Plame, were okay with Doug Liman directing Fair Game, because if I were them, I would have been terrified of me. I have a reputation for being very hard to control, for being very strong-willed. My films portray very complex characters who are not simple heroes. Usually they're anti-heroes. So, if I'm Valerie Plame and Joe Wilson and I want someone to tell my story,
But you took it very seriously.
I did take it seriously, and it actually shows that their commitment to the truth went above their own, sort of desire to just look good on screen.
But how could you also explain what you were able to do to keep it entertaining?
Well, I think they also, Joe and Valerie, knew because of my history, because my father ran Iran-Contra, and because, not only did my father run a congressional investigation to an abuse of power by the White House, but my father, and this is the last time that this happened, I think it was the first and the last time in a century that this happened, that my father was both the representative for the Republicans and the Democrats in the U.S. Senate. Normally, the Democrats would pick their chief counsel, the Republicans would pick their chief counsel. And my father was chief counsel to both the Democrats and the Republicans and unified them. And that was certainly the approach that I tried to bring to Fair Game. And God knows this is a very polarizing story. And, the attacks that have been coming at me are these crazy attacks from people who I'm probably haven't even seen the movie.
Right.
And if they have seen the movie, they didn't watch it. They were so caught up. They're still fighting this war that the general has already left the battlefield. People have challenged me about Joe Wilson's trip to Niger. I'm like, you understand that the White House itself has conceded that Joe Wilson was right. You understand that the day after Joe Wilson wrote his op-ed piece, the White House itself, Ari Fleischer, the press secretary for the White House, for George Bush, admitted that Joe Wilson was right.
Right.
And yet you have these right-wing pundits who are challenging me years later. It's like, don't you understand your general already conceded defeat? Why are you still on this battlefield?
Right. But you were trying to, as I understand it, you inserted a lot more establishing material about her CIA career than was in the script that you first saw.
Yeah, well, the first script that I read was sort of the Wikipedia of the Valerie Plame scandal, which is basically every event that happened, and would have been a fine TV movie, but would not have been a feature film. But the beauty of starting with something like that, it was 4 hours, by the way, because it literally was everything. Like every character you've ever heard in connection with this, Judith Miller, these are characters that are not in the movie, were in the script.